Some people don't break down all at once. They fade, slowly, quietly, without anyone noticing. That's the most dangerous kind of pain. The kind that doesn't show on your face. The kind you carry inside while the world around you keeps moving like nothing happened. You wake up. You go through the motions. You smile when you're supposed to smile. You answer when people call your name. But deep inside, something is missing. Something that used to be there is gone. And you don't even know exactly when it left. You remember a time when you had fire. When you had dreams that kept you awake. Not because of fear, but because of excitement. When you believed that your life was going to be something powerful. Something worth remembering. You used to feel in your chest that hunger, that drive, that burning need to become more. But somewhere along the road, something happened. Life hit you in ways you didn't expect. And that fire, it got smaller and smaller until one day you looked inside yourself and realized the flame was almost gone. And the worst part isn't the pain itself. The worst part is the silence that comes with it. The loneliness that doesn't announce itself. It just sits next to you. Every morning when you open your eyes and feel nothing. Every night when you lie down and your mind becomes a battlefield. Thoughts racing, doubts screaming, questions that have no answers echoing in the dark. You stare at the ceiling and you wonder, is this it? Is this what my life is supposed to feel like? Because if it is, I don't know how much longer I can keep doing this. There's a specific kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot cure. You felt it. It's not in your muscles. It's not in your bones. It's in your soul. It's the exhaustion of trying so hard for so long and seeing nothing change. It's the exhaustion of waking up every day and forcing yourself to believe in something that keeps letting you down. It's the exhaustion of fighting. Not an enemy outside, but the one inside your own head that keeps telling you that you're not good enough. That you never were. That maybe everyone else was right about you all along. You've had days where getting out of bed felt like climbing a mountain. Days where the simplest tasks felt impossible. Days where you sat in a room full of people and felt more alone than you ever did in silence. And nobody knew, because you learned how to hide it. You learned how to function while broken. You learned how to laugh while bleeding on the inside, because showing weakness felt more dangerous than carrying the weight alone. This is the part nobody talks about. The part that doesn't make it into the highlight reels. The part that happens at 3 a.m. when the world is asleep and you're sitting with your thoughts and you feel like you're slowly disappearing. Like every failed attempt, every disappointment, every rejection, every sleepless night has been chipping away at you. And you're scared, not of failing again, but of forgetting who you used to be, of losing the version of yourself that once believed anything was possible. But here's what I need you to understand right now. The fact that you still feel this pain, that means something. Dead things don't hurt. Numb things don't bleed. The fact that this still cuts you, the fact that you still care enough to feel the weight of it, that is not weakness. That is proof that something inside you is still alive. Something inside you is still fighting. Even when you think you've given up, some part of you refused to quit completely. And that part, that's where we begin. Because the greatest comebacks in human history didn't start with a victory. They started with a moment exactly like this one. A moment of darkness, so thick you couldn't see your hand in front of your face. A moment of exhaustion, so deep that continuing felt impossible. A moment of silence, so loud it was deafening. And in that moment, someone chose not to quit. Not because they felt strong, not because they had a plan, but simply because something deep inside them whispered, not yet. Not like this. Not today. You're in that moment right now. And what you do next will define everything. Let me tell you about failure. Not the kind people mention in inspirational quotes. The real kind. The kind that destroys your confidence. The kind that makes you question whether you ever had what it takes. The kind that follows you into your sleep and replaces your dreams with nightmares. You tried. You actually tried. You didn't just talk about it. You did the work. You put in the hours. You made the sacrifices. You told yourself this time would be different. This time you were ready. This time you had figured out what went wrong before and you had fixed it. And then you gave it everything you had. And it still didn't work. That moment, that specific moment when you realize it didn't work again, there is nothing in this world that feels like that. It's not just disappointment. It's something deeper. It's that hollow, sinking feeling in your chest when reality crashes into your hope and leaves wreckage behind. When all the effort, all the time, all the sacrifice collapses in front of you and becomes nothing, and you're left standing in the rubble, wondering what the point of any of it was. And then the voice starts. You know the voice. You've heard it 100 times. It speaks in your own tone. It uses your own memories against you. It lines up every failure you've ever had and presents them like evidence in a trial where you are both the defendant and the judge. It says, see, this is proof. You're not built for this. Other people can do this, but not you. You've tried before and failed. You're trying again and failing. At some point, you have to be honest with yourself. Maybe this just isn't for you. That voice is the most dangerous thing in your life. Not your competition, not your circumstances, not your past. That voice, because it comes from inside. It knows your deepest fears. It knows your most painful memories. It knows exactly how to make doubt feel like logic and giving up feel like wisdom. And the cruelest part of failure isn't the failure itself. It's what it does to the way you see yourself afterward. Before the failure, you had belief. You had a vision of who you were becoming. But after repeated failures, something shifts. You stop seeing yourself as someone who is on the way to success and start seeing yourself as someone who is fundamentally broken. You start to believe that success is something that happens to other people. People who were born with something you weren't given. People who have advantages you don't have. People who exist in a different universe where things actually work out. And the rejection. God, the rejection. Not just the formal kind, the applications that came back denied, the opportunities that never came through, the doors that closed in your face. But the personal kind too. The people who stopped believing in you. The ones who were supposed to be in your corner, but quietly stepped away when things got hard. The looks that people gave you when you talked about your goals. That subtle shift in their expression that told you they didn't believe you could do it, even if they were too polite to say it out loud. The conversations that went quiet when you walked into the room. The feeling of being tolerated instead of respected. Do you know what repeated rejection does to a human being? It doesn't just hurt, it rewires you. It starts to make you afraid to try. Because try means risking rejection again. And you've been rejected so many times that the idea of feeling that again is almost physically painful. So instead, you start to shrink. You start to play small. You stop putting yourself out there the way you used to. You stop announcing your goals. You stop talking about your dreams. Because somewhere in your mind, you've made a deal with yourself. If I don't try, I can't fail. If I don't hope, I can't be disappointed. But here's the truth about failure that no one tells you when you're in the middle of it. Every single person you have ever admired, every person whose life looks like success from the outside, has a private collection of failures that the world never saw. They have rejections that broke them. They have moments where they were absolutely convinced they were done. They have nights that looked exactly like your nights right now. The difference isn't that they failed less. The difference is that they treated failure differently. They stopped seeing it as a verdict and started seeing it as a lesson. They stopped letting it define their identity and started letting it refine their approach. Failure is not the opposite of success. Failure is the price of admission. Every scar has a story, and the stories that shaped the greatest human beings were never the ones where everything went perfectly. They were the stories where everything went wrong, and the person refused to let that be the end. Your failures are not proof that you can't. They're the raw material of someone who eventually will. There's a particular torture that this generation has invented for itself, and it happens every single day, multiple times a day. You pick up your phone, you scroll, and within 30 seconds, you've seen 10 different people living 10 different versions of a life that looks better than yours. The vacations you haven't taken, the bodies you don't have, the relationships that look perfect, the careers that seem effortless, the smiles that never look forced, the success that seems to come so easily to everyone except you. And before you even realize what's happening, your mind has run a full comparison report, and you came out losing. Comparison is a thief, but it's a clever one. It doesn't steal your money or your time. It steals something far more valuable. It steals your peace. It steals your contentment. It steals your ability to appreciate where you actually are because you're too busy measuring yourself against where someone else appears to be. And the word appears is the most important word in that sentence. Because what you're comparing yourself to isn't someone's real life. It's a curated performance. It's the highlight reel of someone else's existence while you're watching your own behind-the-scenes footage. You're comparing your Monday morning, exhausted and doubtful, to their Saturday afternoon, filtered and curated. You're comparing your struggle to their success without seeing any of their struggle. And that comparison is fundamentally dishonest. It's like comparing the final product to the raw materials and concluding that the raw materials are worthless. But even when you know this, even when your rational mind understands that what you're seeing isn't the full picture, the feeling doesn't go away. Because comparison isn't just about logic. It's about something deeper. It activates the most primal human fear, the fear of being left behind. The fear that everyone else has figured out something that you missed. That while you were struggling, the world moved on without you. That there's a version of success that was available to everyone. And somehow, you are the one person who couldn't reach it. And then comes the pressure. From every direction. From people who love you and people who barely know you. Family members who ask questions that feel like accusations. Friends who mean well, but somehow always manage to remind you of how far you still have to go. A society that has decided your worth is directly tied to your productivity, your income, your visible achievements. A culture that has no patience for the process, only the results. A world that applauds arrivals and ignores journeys. You feel it, don't you? That constant pressure to have it figured out. That anxiety that comes with not being where everyone seems to think you should be by now. That exhausting performance of pretending you have a plan when inside you feel completely lost. The pressure to look successful before you feel successful. The pressure to project confidence when you're drowning in doubt. The pressure to keep up with people who started at different starting lines with different resources in completely different circumstances, but are somehow held up as the standard you should be meeting. And the loneliness. This is the part that cuts the deepest. Because when you're going through something difficult, the most natural human instinct is to reach out, to tell someone, to say, I'm not okay, and I need someone to understand that. But you've learned that not everyone can hold that conversation. Some people respond with advice when you needed presence. Some people minimize what you're feeling because they're uncomfortable with the weight of it. Some people become distant because your struggle makes them feel helpless or afraid. And so you learn to carry it alone. You learn to process it privately. You learn to present a functional version of yourself to the world while the real version is falling apart in quiet moments behind closed doors. That loneliness, the loneliness of going through something real while being surrounded by people who don't truly see it, is one of the heaviest weights a human being can carry. It's not just the absence of company. It's the presence of people and still feeling completely unseen, completely unknown, completely alone in a room full of witnesses. But here is something I want to say directly to you in this moment. Your timeline is not behind. It is yours. The fact that someone else reached a destination before you does not mean you're going the wrong way. Different people were given different starting conditions, different obstacles, different lessons that needed to be learned along the way. Comparing your chapter 3 to someone else's chapter 20 and concluding that your story is a failure is one of the most destructive things you can do to yourself. You're not behind. You are exactly where you needed to be to learn what you needed to learn. And when you arrive, and you will arrive, it will not be a moment less powerful because it took longer than you planned. Let me talk about what actually happens when you decide to keep going. Because the decision to not quit is not a moment of inspiration. It is not a beautiful sunrise realization where everything suddenly makes sense. It is not a speech that moves you to tears and sends you running toward your goals with energy you've never felt before. The real decision to keep going looks nothing like that. It's ugly. It's quiet. It happens in the worst moments, not the best ones. It looks like this. You've had another bad day. Everything that could go wrong went wrong. You're exhausted in a way that sleep doesn't fix. You're frustrated in a way that words don't capture. You're sitting alone somewhere, maybe your room, maybe your car, maybe just inside your own head, and every logical argument says stop. Every rational voice is telling you that you've given this enough, that you've sacrificed enough, that continuing is no longer strength, it's stubbornness. That letting go is not failure, it's wisdom. And in that moment, that exact moment, you make the decision. Not because it feels right, not because you feel strong, not because you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. You make the decision because something deeper than logic, something older than reason, something that lives in the very core of who you are simply refuses to accept that this is how your story ends. That is discipline, not the Instagram version of discipline, the clean morning routines, the journals, the cold showers, the aesthetic productivity. The real version, the one that shows up when there is no motivation, when there is no inspiration, when the result of your effort today will not be visible for months or years. When you don't feel like it, you can't see the point of it, and every part of you is screaming to stop, but you do it anyway. That is the most powerful human act that exists. Not talent, not intelligence, not connections, not luck. The ability to act in direct defiance of how you feel. The ability to separate your actions from your emotions. The ability to show up for your goals even when your goals feel like they've abandoned you. And here's what you need to understand about the mental war that happens inside you every single day. You're not one person. You're at least two. There is the version of you that wants the life you've dreamed of, that feels the burning, that sees the vision, that understands what's at stake. And there is the version of you that is afraid. That version wants comfort. It wants safety. It wants certainty. It wants the path of least resistance. It wants to stay exactly where it is because at least here, the pain is familiar. These two versions of you are in constant conflict. Every single day. And every single day, one of them wins. And whichever one wins, more often becomes the dominant version. Becomes the identity. Becomes the life. The question is not whether the fear exists. The question is who you let speak louder. Most people think that the disciplined ones don't feel fear, that the people who show up every day and do the work are somehow immune to doubt, immune to exhaustion, immune to the voice that says stop. That's not true. The most disciplined people feel everything you feel. The difference is that they've made a decision, a fundamental, non-negotiable decision, that their actions will not be held hostage by their emotions. They feel the fear and they move anyway. They feel the exhaustion and they begin anyway. They feel the doubt and they continue anyway. Not because they are superhuman, because they understand something critical. Every time you act in spite of fear, the fear loses a little power. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, the discomfort becomes a little more familiar. Every time you do the hard thing, when every part of you wants to do the easy thing, you are literally rewiring who you are at the deepest level. You're not trying to find motivation. Motivation is weather. It comes and goes, and you cannot control it. You're trying to build something far more powerful. You're trying to build a relationship with yourself where you are the one in charge, where your fears do not set your schedule, where your doubts do not write your story, where your past failures do not vote on your future actions. That relationship, that discipline, is not built in the good moments. It is built in exactly the moments you're experiencing right now. The brutal moments, the invisible moments, the moments where nothing is rewarding you for continuing and everything is inviting you to stop. Those moments are not obstacles to your growth. Those moments are your growth. Something happens to a person who keeps going when every reason to stop exists. It doesn't happen dramatically. It doesn't happen overnight. It happens in the accumulation of small, invisible choices made in the darkness. It happens in the 1,000th time you chose to begin again when beginning felt pointless. It happens somewhere in the middle of the struggle, so quietly that you almost miss it, and then one day you look at yourself and realize you're not the same person you were. This is the transformation, not the arrival at the goal. The transformation of who you become in the process of pursuing it. Because here is what the pursuit of something difficult does to a human being when they refuse to surrender. It strips away everything that was false, everything you thought you needed, every crutch, every comfort, every illusion about who you were, and what you're capable of. The struggle is brutal, yes, but it is also a purification. It burns away the weak excuses. It burns away the soft justifications. It burns away the version of yourself that only existed in comfort and convenience. And what's left, what remains after all of that has been burned, is something real, something tested, something that cannot be shaken by ordinary difficulty because it was forged in extraordinary difficulty. You are not who you were when this started. You need to recognize that. The person who began this journey, that version of you is softer, more naive, more easily broken. But the version of you that has survived every failure, every rejection, every sleepless night, every moment of almost quitting, that person is different. That person has a kind of strength that cannot be taught and cannot be faked. It can only be earned. And you have been earning it this entire time, even when it felt like you were only losing. Think about the person you were before the struggle began. What did you know about yourself then? What had you been tested for? What had you proven? And now, after everything, what do you know about yourself that you could not have known any other way? You know you could survive what you thought would destroy you. You know you can continue when everything says stop. You know you can carry weight that would collapse a lesser version of yourself. That knowledge, that is not nothing. That is everything. The identity shift happens when you stop defining yourself by your results and start defining yourself by your commitment. When you stop measuring your worth by how far you've come and start measuring it by the fact that you haven't stopped. When you stop being the person to whom things happen and start being the person who decides what happens next. This is the moment. This is where the story changes. Not because the circumstances changed, but because you changed. And a changed person in the same circumstances creates entirely different results. Because a changed person sees different possibilities, makes different choices, has different standards for what they will accept and what they will no longer tolerate from the world and from themselves. There's a version of you that exists on the other side of the struggle. A version that you cannot fully see from here because the fog of the current battle is too thick. But that version is real. That version is waiting. And the only thing standing between you and that person is the decision you make in these moments. The decision to keep going. You are not stuck. You are in transition. And transition is always uncomfortable. It is always disorienting. It always feels like loss before it feels like gain. The caterpillar doesn't know it's becoming a butterfly when it's dissolving inside the cocoon. All it knows is that everything familiar is gone. Everything that defined it no longer exists. And it has to trust, without evidence, without certainty, without any guarantee, that what is coming is worth what is being lost. That is where you are right now, inside the cocoon. And it feels like destruction, but it is creation. It feels like an ending, but it is the most important beginning of your life. Now I'm going to say something that you need to hear with your whole body. Not just your ears, not just your mind, your whole body. Enough. Enough apologizing for your ambition. Enough shrinking yourself to fit into spaces that were never built for who you're becoming. Enough performing humility about goals that you have every right to pursue. Enough letting the opinions of people who've never attempted anything significant determine what you believe is possible for you. Enough treating your own potential like something you need to ask permission to access. You have been through too much to still be playing small. Think about what you've survived. Think about the nights that you were convinced would break you and didn't. Think about the moments that felt like they would end you, and here you are. Think about the version of yourself from a year ago, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, the things that terrified that version of you that you walk through now without flinching. You have already proven things about yourself that you haven't fully given yourself credit for. And now the comeback begins. Not a gentle comeback, not a cautious comeback, not a comeback that apologizes for itself or asks the world for validation before it begins. A savage comeback, a quiet, disciplined, relentless, obsessive comeback. The kind of comeback that doesn't announce itself. The kind that simply shows up every single day and does the work while everyone else is still underestimating what you're capable of. Here's what a comeback requires. It requires you to become genuinely dangerous to your own excuses. Every excuse you've been giving yourself. The timing isn't right. I need more preparation. I'll start when things settle down. I don't have enough resources. I'm not ready yet. Those excuses need to die. Today, not because the circumstances that generated them are gone. The circumstances may still be there, but you have to decide that your vision is more important than your comfort. Your future is more important than your fear. Your growth is more important than your excuses. The people who are where you want to be didn't get there because their conditions were perfect. They got there because they stopped waiting for their conditions to be perfect and decided that imperfect action, taken consistently over a long enough period of time, produces results that perfect intentions never could. You need to become obsessed, not in the unhealthy sense, in the sense that your goal becomes the lens through which you see every day, every decision, every hour, every choice. You need to reach the point where the question is no longer whether you will work toward your goal today, only how. The question is not whether you'll continue, only how hard, because you've already answered the big question. The big question was whether you had what it takes to survive the worst of it. And the answer to that question is the fact that you're still here. The most dangerous human being on earth is not the most talented, is not the most intelligent. It is not the most connected or the most resourced. The most dangerous human being is the one who has been broken completely and chose to rebuild, who has been rejected entirely and chose to persist, who has been told they couldn't and decided, quietly and without drama, to show the world exactly what they could. That is who you are becoming. And let me tell you about the sweet, specific satisfaction of proving people wrong. Not because you need their validation, you're past that, but because there's a particular energy that comes from channeling every doubt that was thrown at you, every dismissal, every moment someone underestimated you or wrote you off, and converting that into fuel, into obsession, into the relentless drive to become so undeniably excellent that the narrative has no choice but to change. You remember who doubted you. You remember who didn't show up. You remember who watched you struggle and looked away. You remember who whispered that you weren't enough. Don't carry that as bitterness. Carry it as gasoline and let it burn. Every single morning, before the world wakes up, you wake up. You do the work that no one sees. You build the thing that hasn't been built yet. You become the person who hasn't existed yet. Not for them, for you. For the version of you that always believed, even in the darkest moments, that this wasn't over. For the child version of you that had dreams before anyone had the chance to shrink them. For every moment of silent suffering that deserved a victory. This is what you've been building toward. Through every failure, through every breakdown, through every night of doubt, and every morning of forced faith. It was all preparation. The struggle didn't defeat you. It recruited you. And now you're ready. I want you to think about the most broken moment of your life. Not the inconvenient moments. Not the difficult days. The actual bottom. The moment where you were the most alone, the most defeated, the most convinced that you were finished. The moment where the gap between who you were and who you wanted to be felt so enormous, so insurmountable, that closing it seemed not just difficult, but impossible. You remember it. You can feel it even now. The weight of it. The silence of it. The absolute, suffocating certainty that this was where your story ended. And yet, you are here, right now, reading this, breathing, still in possession of the only things that matter, time, and the ability to choose what you do with it. You didn't quit. In your most broken moment, in the moment that was designed to end you, you didn't quit. You may not have charged forward. You may not have felt victorious. You may have just barely survived, crawling when you couldn't walk, breathing when you couldn't speak, existing when you couldn't thrive. But you made it to this moment, and that means something so profound that I need you to sit with it. That means you're not someone who quits. You've been calling yourself weak. You've been telling yourself you don't have what it takes. You've been accepting a narrative about yourself that is fundamentally, demonstrably, undeniably false. Because if you were the person that narrative says you are, you wouldn't be here. The person you've been accusing yourself of being would have stopped a long time ago. But you didn't stop, which means you're not that person. You're something else entirely. You're the person who lost everything and started again. You are the person who cried at night and worked in the morning. You are the person who had no proof it would work and did it anyway. You were the person who survived the version of their life that was supposed to break them, and came out the other side carrying something that no one else can touch. You have paid a price. A real, heavy, costly price for where you're trying to go. Every hour of lost sleep is a payment. Every rejection is a payment. Every moment of doubt you pushed through is a payment. Every sacrifice you made that no one acknowledged is a payment. You have been investing in something that hasn't paid out yet. But every investment has an accumulation period. Every seed has a season underground before anyone sees it break the surface. And the seeds planted deepest, in the hardest ground, in the coldest seasons, when they finally break through, they cannot be stopped. They do not grow small. So hear me when I say this. Your time is not over. It has not passed. The window has not closed. The opportunity has not expired. Whatever age you are, whatever has happened, however far off the path you feel, you still have time. And more than time, you have something that no one who hasn't suffered the way you have can ever possess. You have proof. Proof carved into you by every difficult moment you survived. Proof that you are capable of enduring more than you thought. Proof that your spirit is stronger than your circumstances. Proof that your will, when truly activated, is more powerful than any obstacle that has ever been placed in your way. This is not the end of your story. This is the chapter where the character decides who they're going to be for the rest of the story. And that decision, that singular, defining decision, will echo forward into everything that comes after. Every moment that follows this one will be shaped by what you choose right now. So choose. Not when you feel ready. You'll never feel perfectly ready. Not when the conditions improve. The conditions are always imperfect. Not when someone gives you permission. No one is coming to give you permission. Choose right now, in this exact state, with everything that's uncertain, with everything that's still unresolved, with the wounds that haven't fully healed and the goals that feel impossibly far away. Choose to stand up one more time. Choose to begin again. Not because you know it will work, but because you know that not trying is the only guaranteed failure. Choose to treat your own life like it is worth fighting for, because it is. Choose to become so committed to your vision that the world has no choice but to eventually step out of the way. Because that is what the greatest human beings who have ever lived have done. Not the ones who were blessed with perfect circumstances. Not the ones who had every advantage. The ones who were handed the hardest circumstances and refused to let those circumstances write the final sentence. The ones who were told no so many times that they stopped hearing it. The ones who fell so many times that falling lost its power over them. The ones who went so far into the dark that they stopped being afraid of it. You're built for this. Not despite the suffering, because of it. Not in spite of everything you've been through it. Every painful experience was shaping something inside you. Every failure was teaching something to you. Every dark night was building a version of you that the light cannot build. And that version, the one forged in difficulty, tested in pain, refined in fire, that version is becoming unstoppable. The world will not always understand your journey. That's fine. You don't need the world to understand it. You need you to understand it. You need to know, in the place in your chest where the truth lives, that you were made for more than this. That this struggle is not your destination. It is your training ground. And training grounds are supposed to be hard. That's what makes them effective. Do not quit. Not today. Not tomorrow. Not ever. Not because life will suddenly become easy. Not because the pain will disappear. Not because every doubt in your mind will go silent. Life will still be hard. Pain will still visit. Doubt will still speak. But you will be different. You will hear the doubt and nod at it like an old opponent you've already defeated before. You will feel the pain and recognize it as the sensation of growth. You will face the difficulty and understand, at a cellular level, that this is exactly where you are supposed to be. Because you're not someone who quits. You proved that already. In every moment that tried to end you and failed. In every version of yourself that could have stopped and didn't. In every painful choice to try one more time when trying felt like the stupidest thing a person could do. You proved it. You're proving it. You will continue to prove it. Stand up. Square your shoulders. Take the breath that reminds you that you are still here and still in this fight. And then do the work. Quietly. relentlessly, magnificently, because the world has no idea what is coming from you. And neither do you yet. But you will.